We're back on Get Up, and we do have some breaking news. We've been waiting for Darius Slay to get traded, and indeed he has been, from Detroit to Philadelphia after 7 seasons with the Lions. And I'm told for more I can bring in Dan Graziano, our insider who has been working on the story. Dan, what can you tell us?
Yeah, according to sources, Greeny, Darius Slay headed to the Eagles in exchange for a 3rd-round pick and a 5th-round pick. This is a player that the Lions really felt like they weren't going to be willing to meet his contract demands. He had 1 year left on his contract at $10 million. He's watching Byron Jones sign for $16.5 million, and James Bradbury for $14.5 million wanted to be paid along those lines. According to our Adam Schefter just a few moments ago, Drew Rosenhaus, Slay's agent, told Adam that Slay has agreed to a 3-year contract with the Eagles. It'll pay him about $16.6 million with $30 million guaranteed over the next 3 years. So it seems like he's happy, and the Lions replaced him yesterday with Desmond Trufant, and they had a couple picks along the way and bid goodbye to Darius Slay, their Pro Bowl cornerback.
All right, so not a huge surprise, but the deal is done. The wheeling and dealing continues in this new NFL league year. Dan Graziano, thank you. Meanwhile, let's talk about the Arizona Cardinals. 3-13 2 years ago, worst in the NFL. They hired Cliff Kingsbury after Texas Tech fired him. He replaced Steve Wilkes, who was the coach in Arizona for just 1 year. And then, of course, the Cardinals selected Kyler Murray with the #1 pick in last year's draft, and he showed a lot of really good signs. Threw for 3,700 yards, 20 touchdowns. Cardinals went 5-10-1, which was a step in the right direction, and they had a lot of good moments. And then this week they had a great one, adding DeAndre Hopkins, one of 4 players to be named first-team All-Pro in each of the last 3 seasons. And after all these acquisitions, the Cardinals will look that they might be ready to do something here. They haven't made the playoffs since 2015, but our friends at Caesars Sportsbook have them tied with L.A. for the longest odds to reach the playoffs out of their division at plus 425. So let's see what it winds up here. And I want to bring Louis Riddick back into this conversation because, you know, we talked about Murray and Kingsbury, and I think there were a lot of things to be encouraged about. And now they get DeAndre Hopkins for what felt like 50 cents on the dollar. What do you make of what they've got working there in Arizona now?
Yeah, they've got some nice things going on, don't they? I mean, DeAndre Hopkins obviously is a premier playmaker. And with Larry Fitzgerald, you know, basically at the end of his career, and Christian Kirk being someone who's going to become an emerging presence, and they need guys like Andy Isabella to become big play threats down the field. Now they've got that guy who can kind of be the heir apparent to someone like a Larry Fitzgerald, obviously. And then now, so with DeAndre Hopkins, they have a number 1 type of receiver, a true number 1 type receiver that Kyler Murray can just utilize in every way, shape, and form. And it really does beg the question of why in the world would the Texans not be able to manage that relationship to the point where they wouldn't let a 27-year-old at the top of his career, at the top of his game, get out of there. And that's not even to mention now, Kenyon Drake at running back is one of the most dynamic, explosive, dual-threat runners in the National Football League, and you can see why they felt as though they could move on from David Johnson and still get tremendous value and tremendous production with Kenyon Drake. So I think right now Cliff Kingsbury is sitting in a nice position. The defense needs to continue to build and grow and become a team that can just turn the ball over and give the ball back to the offense so this offense can continue to explode. Because, I mean, that's really what the name of the game is, right? If you ultimately want to get to the promised land and beat teams like the Kansas City Chiefs, meaning if you can get to the Super Bowl, you have to be able to score points, and you need weaponry on the perimeter. And it seems like right now they're starting to collect it.
All right, we shall see what they wind up with. Louis Riddick, thank you so much for doing this. You stay safe, my friend, and we will see you soon. I'm being told that we have some Tom Brady news, and we'll get to that. All right, among the many storylines surrounding Tom Brady's jump to the Buccaneers is the idea that he was smart to get away from the loaded AFC, to get away from teams like the Ravens and Chiefs. I was on First Take yesterday, and that came up, and Stephen A. Smith was not buying it at all. Listen to this.
I don't want to hear a damn soul talking about how Tom Brady should not have stayed in New England or gone someplace else because you want to avoid Patrick Mahomes or you want to avoid Lamar Jackson or something like that. That is nonsensical to me. It makes no sense. It goes against the very thing that competitive fervor is supposed to represent. I can understand you don't want to go to an inferior team, but I'm sorry, as an individual, you shouldn't be avoiding individuals when it comes to competition. To beat a man, you got to beat the man.
So Steve and I actually went at it yesterday, and he will join us in an hour to continue this conversation. But Dan Orlovsky, you were one of the people that I've heard saying that it was wise or would be wise and then ultimately was for Brady to get out of the AFC. What do you think of what Stephen A. said?
Yeah, I mean, ignorance is always afraid of change, Greeny. And Tom Brady wasn't ignorant in the fact that those two up-and-coming quarterbacks and Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson are coming, and so are their football teams. And so the best way for him to go back to the Super Bowl, the easiest route for him to go back to the Super Bowl and win the championship was going to be out of that conference. Now, that being said, Stephen A. Smith, I wish he was sitting right here with us right now, because Tom Brady is still the man. Like, there is no, he's got to go beat somebody to become the man. He is the man. He's gone to 8 out of the last 9 AFC championships, 4 out of the last 6 Super Bowls, winning 3 of them. So Tom Brady has not passed the baton to anybody. The reality is, when he took the step back and looked at what was the best way for him to win a championship, it was going to be to see those guys in the end result and face them rather than have to go through them to get there, Greeny. So, like, listen, Tom Brady's still the man. Make no bones about it. This is not Denzel Washington passing the baton to Michael B. Jordan just yet, okay? They still have to go hunt him down.
What do you think, Swaggo?
Patrick Mahomes is the man, period. That's what we've been talking about for the last year. That's what we talked about, his opportunity to get the ball back in the playoffs. They would have won the game. Patrick Mahomes has taken the throne to being the best quarterback in the NFL. We all know that. That's belaboring a point that everyone on television has ever said. And I agree with Stephen A. I've said it on this show. Like, Tom Brady is not afraid. And this is really in defense of Tom Brady. Now, maybe he did make the decision to avoid Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson in the AFC. But I wouldn't think that Tom Brady would be afraid to play those guys before getting to a Super Bowl. Maybe he took the easier route. I just talked about him being 40 and wanting to get to the Super Bowl and going to Tampa. Obviously, he has to face Drew Brees. That's not going to be easy either. But the fact to say that Tom Brady was afraid to go play against Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, if Tom Brady told me that, I would look at Tom Brady differently. But I'm sure, and I want to have the confidence that Tom Brady just decided to go to Tampa because he thought that was the best place for him to play football.
We will have Stephen A. In this conversation, and we'll do it in an hour, so you'll get a chance, you guys, to talk with him about it. What I said to him, and I'll say it to both of you, is, first of all, there's nothing easy about winning a Super Bowl, regardless of what team and which conference you play in. And I always tell my kids, life is hard enough on its own. Don't make it harder unnecessarily. If you can find a slightly easier path to an extraordinarily difficult goal to attain, go ahead and take it. That's not being cowardly. That's being smart. Now, Brady, of course, replaces Jameis Winston, who led the NFL in passing last year with more than 5,000 yards and became the first player in Tampa history to reach that threshold. But that obviously isn't the whole story, or he would still be there. He also led the league with 30 interceptions, which made him the first player in NFL history with 30 touchdowns and 30 picks in a season. He was his own personal 30 for 30, as people joke all the time. So if this is it for Winston in a Buccaneers uniform, he is the only player to throw a pick six as his first and last pass attempt with a franchise in the last 40 years. He threw 7 pick sixes last year, the most in a season in NFL history. And you guys know that I'm sort of the last man standing on the Jameis Winston hill. I have not given up on him. But the question becomes, what is the right place for him to go now to ultimately reach whatever potential it is we believe he has? Marcus, I will start with you.
I heard, I think it was Shefty or somebody said it, but I agree. I think Pittsburgh. And I'm thinking Pittsburgh because of Mike Tomlin and culture. We saw Mike Tomlin win games with Duck Hodges at quarterback. We saw him stay in games with Mason Rudolph. And obviously, Big Ben Roethlisberger is there, who is kind of in that same sloshy vein as Jameis Winston. Obviously, not throwing the interceptions, but big physical quarterbacks, that type of offense that likes to throw the ball ball downfield, takes chances. Pittsburgh may be a good landing spot for Jameis to go sit. I believe this firmly, Greeny, and you saying you're the last man down the hill. I'm not sure if I'm standing up there with you, but I will say I've seen guys benefit from having the opportunity to step away from the game and actually watch it being played and have an opportunity to diagnose things, see things in a different light than going out there with the pressure of starting. Maybe that's what Jameis needs to invigorate his career and try to understand why not to put the ball in the harm's way. But that, to me, that would be a good landing spot. It wouldn't be any pressure for him to play, and Roethlisberger is built similar to James Winston.
What do you think, Dan?
I agree. I've warmed up to Pittsburgh for Jameis Winston. My reasoning is this. We're obviously in a very unique state when it comes to the NFL in the offseason, right? I don't think it's a good time because Jameis Winston, the reality is he needs to kind of remake his career, reset his career in the NFL. And it's just not going to be a good offseason to go do that because you don't want to go sign somewhere and kind of be the presumptive starter in an offseason where you don't know when you're going to be allowed in the building. You don't know when you're going to be really able to